To find the derivative of cosine, we're going to begin by writing out the definition of the derivative. So we have the limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. These two parts of our formula are what we're looking for. So f of x, according to our first equation, is the cosine of x, and f of x plus h is going to be equal to the cosine of x plus h. Now that we have these two pieces, we can plug them into our formula, and we can find our derivative. So in our numerator, f of x plus h is going to be replaced by the cosine of x plus h. And f of x is going to be replaced by the cosine of x. I'm going to plug in using parentheses or brackets to make sure that we don't make any mistakes distributing that subtraction. So we'll end up with the cosine of x plus h minus the cosine of x, all over h. From here, we have to use an angle addition formula from back in trigonometry. So the cosine of x plus h is going to become the cosine of x times the cosine of h minus the sine of x times the sine of h. That will all still be minus the cosine of x, and everything will still be over h. We're going to group together the terms in the numerator that contain the cosine of x. So we'll have the cosine of x times the cosine of h minus the cosine of x minus the sine of x times the sine of h, all over h. And now that we've grouped together those cosines, we can factor out the cosine of x from the two terms that we've grouped. So we're going to have the cosine of x, and that will be multiplied by the quantity, the cosine of h minus 1. And that will be minus the sine of x times the sine of h, all over h. From here, we're going to split our big fraction into two smaller fractions, which will allow us to simplify using some limit definitions. We'll have the cosine of x times the cosine of h minus 1 over h minus the sine of x times the sine of h all over h. And from here, we're going to factor out the cosine of x and the sine of x in each of our respective terms. So we're going to end up with the cosine of x times the quantity cosine of h minus 1 over h. And from that, we're going to subtract the sine of x times the quantity sine of h over h. And now, using the limit rules that we have listed at the top of the problem, we know what happens to a couple of the pieces of these terms as the limit of h approaches 0. So this becomes the cosine of x times 0 minus the sine of x times 1. And if we clean that up, we have our final answer, which is that the derivative of cosine of x is negative sine of x.